I'm not here to declare victory on the economy. I'm here to say we have a plan that's turning things around quickly, but we have a lot more work to do. So here's the simple truth about trickle-down economics. It represented a moment when we walked away from how this country was built. Bidenomics is just another way of saying restoring the American dream.
So that was President Biden earlier today in South Carolina touting Bidenomics, what he and the White House are now calling. But are the American people buying it? A new poll shows the president's job approval when it comes to the economy is only 34%. And in a different poll, nearly half of voters say that their financial situation is getting worse. Joining us now to discuss, the former chief economist to the President's Council of Economic Advisors under George W. Bush, Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Douglas, thank you for joining us here on the Hill. Appreciate the time. Excited to talk to you. So you know both sides of the arguments here. On one side, you could say, look, unemployment is at near historic lows. You got positive job creation for nearly 2.5 years here. The stock market is at an all-time high or near it. You got a manufacturing boom going on in this country. That's one side. On the other, you could say inflation is still sticky. People are feeling this in their auto loans and in their mortgage loans. Take-home pay is not what it should be. And 22% of adults say they've got no emergency savings. So with that as part of the backdrop, is Bidenomics working?
I think it's hard to defend the record. It really is. The president inherited an economy that was growing at 6.3%. It is now growing at 2% at best. He inherited an economy that had inflation of 1.4%. Right now, still, food, energy, and shelter are going up at over 5% a year. So that means 50% of the typical family's budget is still going up at a 5% rate. And they feel that all the time. And the wages aren't rising, so the dollars don't go as far. Real wages have declined. And when you want to say, oh, you know, we've had this employment growth, well, that was inevitable. We lost 20 million jobs in a month during the pandemic. They were going to come back. There's nothing about Bidenomics that did that. You say, oh, unemployment's incredibly low. That's the flip side to an economy that had way too much spending, way too much stimulus, and has a lot of inflation. It'll go back up when that comes down. And quite frankly, there's not a manufacturing boom. Manufacturing indicators have been down for 8 straight months. There was a manufacturing boom, and it's reversed course on his watch. So, you know, they are doing their best to paint a picture that this combination of taxes, enormous spending, and big regulation are working. But it's hard to believe it when you look at the numbers.
When you look at the numbers, inflation, because the economy is issue number one, and then issue number one within the economy is inflation. 7% year over year, 6.5% down to 4%. It is persistent, it is sticky, but it is also coming down. If I were to ask you to put on your Democratic hat for a second, what's the case do you think that the president can and should make as he heads into a re-election?
So the case the president can make is that his favored constituencies have been served well by Bidenomics. You know, they are very good at putting together a whole bunch of coalitions and making sure they get their stuff. So, you know, we're going to do climate as the #1 policy in the nation. What do you do inside of that? Well, you undercut the climate policy by making it really expensive. The unions get prevailing wage stuff. You get domestic content rules to make sure that it goes to their preferred manufacturers. So they take care of people politically, and they can make the case they did that. But they can't make the case that they've looked at the general welfare of the population, friend and foe, and seen it get better. It really just hasn't.
Hey, Douglas,
I got to tell you, this... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just before, we got to run, but, you know, there were the minutes from the Federal Reserve, which is basically a peek behind the scenes of what the top Fed officers were talking about in their last meeting. And here's part of what they said, quote, "The staff saw the possibility of the economy continuing to grow slowly and avoiding a downturn almost as likely as the mild recession baseline." Basically saying that there was a coin flip right now that at the end of the year or at the start of next year, we could have growth or we could have a mild recession. Is there a bit of risk reward here for the president to embrace Bidenomics at this time? Because either he's going to be really right or they're going to be really wrong, right?
I'll be honest. I'm puzzled by the embrace. Individually, a lot of the policies poll as being popular, but he's not. I mean, every poll shows that. And that risk calculation is either we have a recession or we have really bad growth. I don't see why wrapping your arms around that is a good electoral strategy. I wouldn't have advised it. I find this a mysterious move by the administration, but, you know, they're locked in now. We'll see how it goes.
All right, Douglas Holtz-Eakin. Hope you come on back. Nice to talk to you, sir. Thank you for joining us here on The Hill on NewsNation. Scott, I bet you got a different take.
Well, you know, I look at the numbers, and your guest sat with the numbers and commented on them. But this is a slow and steady recovery from the pandemic, one. Two, inflation is in the reverse. It's at 4% now. He's created